street to the left of the market. That's Oxford Street. That's where we used to have a flat. Jeff and I had a flat on the first floor. And a woman next door just got very upset because the TV Times came to do an interview about me, and they said Victoria Wood lives next door to the house with sauce bottles in the window. She did have sauce bottles in the window, but she was mortified that they'd actually put this in black and white. She thought it was my fault. Anyway, we left there, and we bought a house in Silverdale. Not a very good place for comedy, no. There's no comedy in scenery. You need people for comedy, really. I suppose I wanted to be odd in a way. I wanted to cut myself off. I wanted to be separate. I didn't have the nerve to go to London, really.
Is that what it was?
I didn't want to compete.
What I'm slightly surprised about is that you regret it at all, given the amount of material that seems to me to come through.
Yes, well, we should have had a bit of a life, that's all. I had a great act and no life. I was posed endlessly on piers in front of shooting galleries, you know, and that was Northern Funny Girl. That's who I became. I was a Northern Funny Girl. Pretend to be Northern, just not like sense. Northern, it doesn't have to make sense. Take a listen to Northern cliche, and you can't go wrong. Put it any order. You've got that Northern song, you just go try. Club, going to the dog, bringing a back road tram. Brass band, holding in your hand, moving the next door man. Walk, walk, and you go.
The first leg of Victoria Wood's British tour finished in July, nearly 5 months after her first tryouts. The final performances were in Manchester, a few miles from the town where she was brought up.
You like the Post? The theatre we used to go to Royal and the pantomime. We used to sit at the back, right at the top, in the gods. When I was little, you know, there was no party bags or no consolation prizes, none of this, everybody has to go home with something. When you played musical chairs, if you were out, you were out. I mean, out in the street, go on. It's raining, Mrs. Pickering, I mean it.
People would expect me to say, didn't that feed your sense of being brought up there? Didn't that give you a head and shoulders start in humour? Being in Ramsbottom and all that northern humour that we're also there. I mean, wasn't that a flyer of a start? What was it? Well, it was very, like I said, it was very isolated. You know, we were on this hill. We didn't have any neighbours. Nobody ever came to the house. But certainly, I found when I started writing that I had been fed in all sorts of ways. I was not even aware that people were coming out of my pen that I had not ever been aware of hearing. But all those voices and all those people, they had soaked into me somehow. And you know when you do pass the parcel now, you have to put a little prize in each layer so that each child who unwraps a layer gets a prize. None of that when I was little. You were lucky if you got one at the end, you know. You'd unwrap the last thing and go, there's nothing in it, Mrs. Pickering. No, that's life, that's it, think on. I didn't think it would be like this, did you? Why? Well, when I won the colouring competition in the Evening News, I was invited backstage to meet Harry Seacombe at the Palace Theatre as part of the prize. Sleepy Time elves like to colouring, so I remember having terrible trouble with the stripes on the pyjamas. Of course, that was before felt tip. We went to see Freddie Garrity once. You know, Freddie and the Dreamers, in his dressing room. That was like somebody's sitting room. So telly and a bed and everything. I went off him, though, because he had a string vest. Talent, Victoria Wood's 1978 stage play about the backstage experiences of a talent contest competitor and her friend, was recorded for television by Granada. The head of drama there, Peter Eckersley, immediately commissioned her to write 2 new plays especially for television, and then her own series.
Hi chaps, evening. Welcome to Wood & Walters, the comedy show with a difference. It's offbeat, it's zany, it doesn't get laughed. We did some of Wood & Walters, I think, in here, even though it's so tiny, and they just had little tiny, 2 little strips of audience, and the audience were ancient, they were about 80, and somebody came out, the warm-up man, and said, "Now we're going to do a sketch set in a boutique," and they went, "What's a boutique?" And nobody laughed at any of the sketches, and the woman turned to them and said, "We're missing Brideshead for this."
can I help you? I was wondering if you had B414. What? This is a boutique of the Elephant House. Hey, Eileen, we've got another fatso in. I would set myself up as a victim, and Julie would be the cruel one, and I would be the one who was being cruel to. And I think that was just something that, like, you know, that was my own chip on my shoulder, or my own insecurity about being fat or being northern or whatever that I felt insecure about. I worked through in those sketches, and later on I didn't need to do that. Something to feel quite bad about what I look like. Oh, you go. You need an awful lot of material. You need to. I write double, at least double, and throw half of it away. And I think that's the best way to raise the standard. I didn't do that on Woodmore because I didn't know you had to. I learned from that when I came to do Victoria Wood as seen on TV.
Excuse me, sir, like to test? Excuse me, sir, like to test?
What is that?
It's an anti-mugging spray, sir.
The fact is, Mrs. O, my life seems completely grey, bleak and pointless.
Well, yes. Sometimes that's God's way of getting you to enjoy gardener's world.
One of the things that's marked your career is the loyalties that you've had to people you've worked with. What about the relationship with Julie Walters?
What I think technically she's admirable. I think she's so clever with her voice and everything. Right, Julie goes into the window and bats it out. I mean, that's really funny physically when she actually does it. Hello, there's a pair of shoes in the window.
Yes, that's right, we do that because it's a shoe shop.
And a black lace-up, $15.99.
Are they?
Can I try them on?
On your feet?
Yes.
All right, why not?
It was like it was specially for me. And everything she writes feels like it's especially for me, that if I could write like that, this is what I would write. Sorry, the black ones, they're a flat lace-up.
Beg pardon?
Well, those aren't flat. I mean, I can draw things out of myself, but mainly I have to draw out of me, my life now and the way I live now. Certainly as far as stand-up goes. I can't, you know, people, when I moved from the north, people say, well, what will you write about? I thought, well, I'll just write about what is now. Where I live, it's really filthy, mainly because of traffic. So much traffic. And you know, all the traffic where I live is these women in these huge four-wheel drive jeeps driving their children to school. Now, why do they have to have four-wheel drive in London? I don't understand, you know. Unless they're worried about encountering a low-sugar Ribena slick coming up Highgate Hill.
What eventually got you to make this huge leap and come all of 250 miles south to London?
I was always packing up one child and travelling with her up and down the motorway. And it's not a nice drive, you know, it's 5 hours at least to get to London from Silverdale. I said, we've got to have an ordinary life where we just, you know, we take them to school around the corner and we go into work and we, you know, we come back at the end of the day. You know, a meeting takes half an hour to travel to and not 5 hours. I was just trying to turn into a normal person, really.
Did you think success helped you to turn into what you call a normal person?
No, it didn't at all, because I was successful for ages and still barmaid, so it wasn't really that.
You describe yourself as a barman?
But not now.
Where did the barmenders come from, do you think?
It's partly being very driven and very set on one thing, to the exclusion of everything else. And also I've realised now, living in a world of books, I learned everything I knew about life from books, and so life was a constant disappointment to me.
It has changed. She has become... But I think that's the key of it, that she's happier with herself and more confident in herself. And so she's, you know, able to give out. And, I mean, it's a terrifying thing to have to go out and stand on a stage anyway. You'd have to be mad to be totally confident in the first place, wouldn't you, really?
Oh dear, you see, I'm not a proper celebrity. You see, that's the trouble. See, real celebrities, they do things like getting drunk and dancing naked on tables, which I just don't do. Anyway, the tables in Pizza Hut are really wobbly, aren't they? See, if I was a real celebrity, I'd have to have at least 4 children. 1 naturally, 2 adopted, 1 from sperm sent in by a well-wisher. I'd have to call them Pinky Perky, monosodium glutamate and Satsuma.
What attracts you about writing about celebrity?
It's something that's happened to me, so I can see it from the inside. But also, I'm not particularly taken in by it. But I'm just interested how people, whether, you know, people who read their own press and people who believe their own reviews.
I sexy yet vulnerable, and I'm quoting from Harper's here. I, Pat Bedford of Glamour, who came 6th in the world's most envied bottom poll 1992, just 2 below Claudia Schiffer, have now been publicly linked with a woman whose buttocks practically skim the carpet.
And were you particularly pleased with Pat and Margaret? It brought together a lot of themes that were in your shows, didn't it? The lonely, isolated girl,
It did, yeah.
and then this glamorous television, well, in this case, film world star.
And also, what effect does it have on somebody to be famous, to be brought together with somebody who's not famous? I was very interested in the clash of that and how people perceive themselves when they're famous.
Yes, Margaret Mottershed, motorway waitress, the sister you haven't seen for 27 years. Now one of the highest paid actresses in American television. A very special magic moment. Here she is, from Glamour, the glamorous Patricia Bedford.
The first premise of Pat and Margaret was 2 people being reunited on a television show. It was dealing with families and history, people's pasts, bumping up against people's presents.
Isn't that our best one?
There's a sense in which Pat and Margaret, to some extent, both you.
It was both me. Yeah. It was that battle between the one who can never get on, the sort of impotent person, and the one who's so determined to get on, there's no room for anything else. It was, sort of, yeah.
And so you would, I mean, that sort
A
of...
bit perspicacious of it.
Pardon?
A bit perspicacious.
You sign this. It's just to say, we're not related, I haven't got a sister, you have no claim on Pat Bedford Inc. That's my company.
You're not signing this. What? You have got a sister. I am your sister. You know I am. You recognised me straight away, didn't you?
You don't have to sign it until Claire brings the cheque.
People behave as if what was written about them was true, and we all know we're all little frightened, vulnerable people, but some people will read what, they're billing on the poster and actually believe it. Well, at the end of the day, we all have to go home, the theatre lights go out, we all go home, who are you then? I was just interested in that, and somebody who blocked off their past and was acting as if they were just a famous person. Well, nobody is just that, everybody has a history, and that was what I wanted to get into. We've got 4 more nights here in Manchester, then we finish, then there's a break for the whole of the summer holidays, and then we pick it up again in Cambridge as a warm for the holidays. This is the middle of July, and I started writing it in the middle of January. I started trying it out at the beginning of March, and I've been on the road since the beginning of May. So it's been a long time. I feel I'm ready for it to finish now. It's been very tiring because most of the time I've commuted home every night, and that has been really tiring for me. It's very boring apart from the house, coming back in a car every night and then getting up at 6:30, 7 o'clock when you've only got back at 1. It's just tiring. But this week I've had a rest because I've been away from home all week. So I'm actually feeling good this week. I'm all right. It's been really good. I haven't got really any complaints about it. I mean, I do get tired because it is lonely. It just is lonely. I mean, I think that's the nature of the job.